and what a dummy!
Welcome back to the Fantasy Rugby Drive podcast. Thanks for downloading and listening. I'm Bruce Wilkinson, and joining me again in the booth is the man primarily made of moss, Nathan Mossman. How are you, sir?
Fantastic.
Instead of me asking you a question, I had this little brainchild that we have some great listeners. Our listeners are very amusing. They provide us with hours of entertainment. I figured I'd ask them. I'd reach out to them. They're much more creative than myself. Do a bit of crowdsourcing, if you will. So I asked them on Twitter this morning, and they came up with some crackers. I'll try and make this a weekly occurrence, actually, because it is quite funny. We're looking for something topical, something non-rugby related. So, for instance, today would be a good example of something about Kobe's 60 points that he just dropped on the Jazz, or perhaps something to do with the Golden State Warriors, or the fact that Twitter went down for 20 minutes during both games. Something like that. But we do have one from Ed Pye here, who asks, which historical figure would be best at fantasy? And he proffers a suggestion, which would be John Dillinger, due to most clean breaks.
Nice. Okay, so I take it from that he's talking about a player in fantasy rather than a fantasy manager. The first one that comes to mind really is OJ Simpson. If you're talking about clean breaks, and we made a lot of yards.
He got a lot of meters, didn't he?
A lot of meters, quite, and even when you catch up to him, he's quite hard to bring down.
A few offloads on the way, I suspect. Maybe a set of gloves, a knife.
Yeah, definitely. I'd imagine he's probably beaten a few defenders. He's definitely beaten a few prosecutions anyway. So
if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, maybe Johnny Cochran might not be a bad option as well.
Okay, we're recording this on Thursday, April the 14th. We're going to discuss team naming Thursday. Have a look at some recommendations for Game Week 8. Some very frustrating teams have been named. Before we get into that, though, it's about that time of the year, Mossman, where we have to start looking at trades, and we have to start looking at how to police them in your own league, how we go about ascertaining whether there's collusion involved in a league, whether it's a dodgy one, or whether it's just an unbalanced trade. So Bruce Baxter brings this up because there isn't anything in the system at the moment on the site that allows the commissioner to either decline or accept a trade. Now, traditionally, ways that other sites go, and the ways that we will eventually go as well, is giving either the commissioner the power to veto a league. So if they think that it's collusion or some standard that's accepted by all of the managers to be an acceptable trade, then he has the power to veto it. Or the other option, which I actually don't fancy myself, is the collective group where everyone has an option to vote. And they vote on the trade, and over the balance of probability, or sometimes you can make it up to 75%. If it goes over a certain threshold of unacceptability or the vote count, then the trade is vetoed. Which way do you kind of sit on that? Which one do you prefer?
I think if you've got a decent commissioner and you hopefully you do, then it really should rest with him, and it's his responsibility to make sure that the league works. And I think if your commissioner is not doing that, or basically just being a bit of a dick, then no one's going to play in that league, are they?
Yeah, and that's right. What invariably we've seen over the years is that people are fairly apathetic as well, and it takes a lot to get above that 50% threshold anyway. So even if the trade does look like collusion, the chances are there's probably only going to be 4 managers that actually burn some calories and press the reject button, which is where I think the commissioner should control it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that people probably don't realise is that at your desk in the NRL bunker, you're actually getting information basically piped straight in from the NSA, aren't you? So you're able to monitor people's calls, texts, emails. So you're all over it. You know exactly what they're up to and pretty much what they're thinking. There's there's a few people out there that are probably thinking that right now, and we know. Just keep that in mind.
When AOL back in the day released their most popular search queries in the year, and they only did it a couple of years, and they stopped doing it because the top one was how to kill my wife most of the time. So they stopped releasing that.
No, it's kind of in the same way that I remember the Simpsons episode where Major League Baseball had satellites that were just monitoring everybody's activity. This is very much like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, as we say, eventually we will get there. So at the moment, you're going to have to rely on bringing your own sanctions if someone does do a lopsided trade or a completely illegal trade, or it's collusion or something like that. I have a fairly low threshold myself on what is subjective value and what isn't, because I think value is in the eye of the beholder. It's only when you start getting into trades where people don't have anything to win for. It's not a keeper league, for instance. They don't go into next year, and there's just no motivation, and they're just trading away. That and collusion as well, where someone's clearly said, give me these two players for someone absolute rubbish. So sometimes it's a tricky investigation to hold, because you don't really know the motivations for most, but I think we're all kind of grown-ups here, and you pick up the phone or have a chat to someone and you can find out whether or not they've done it. Now, I know a couple of leagues have handed down some sanctions and people have lost draft picks for the year following, and that tends to keep everyone on their toes and make sure that they keep the trades clean. And I think that's a good idea as well. I know you and I, Mossman, we have a number of different leagues and different sports, and it's key to start building that kind of rules manifesto, that league manifesto, isn't it?
Yeah. I've found across most of those leagues that you're generally willing to cheat to win, and so far it hasn't come to fruition.
It's in the fine print of those manifestos.
That's right.
Yeah, no, and that's the point, right? So you learn every year that a rule may be necessary, so you just add it to the list and make sure your commissioner just keeps it somewhere where it's readily accessible and people know what it is. So, for instance, one of the rules that we made in our leagues this year was just the 1 week nature of trades, right? Okay, let's move on to the top 5 free agent ads of the week, Nathan. Can you have a run at those?
Yeah, I definitely think I could have a crack at a couple of them just because I've seen a lot of action with these two gentlemen. One of them would be Martin Hernandez,
yes.
John Martin as you like to call him, and Matt Proctor I think would be another one.
2 and 3, yes.
Yeah, okay, 2 and 3.
Number 1 is going to drive everyone in the world in FRD insane.
Oh yes, of course, that'll be Melani Nanai.
Yes, that's right. Sorry, put a little bit out there. So frustrating. But we'll get on to that in Emmy of the Blues. Sean Venter, number 4, and Jerome Kano, number 5. And the converse of that, or the inverse of that, if you will.
I wonder if Corey Jane's been dropped.
No. He's down the list. He's only down 3.5%.
Oh, he should have.
There's a big injury.
Yeah, I mean... Kutsia?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, right.
And then there's a couple of bit part players that have come in, and then your favourite Bond henchman.
Oh, yes. No, he deserves to be on the bench as well.
Yeah, so he's number 4. So Kutsia, Sean Wainui, Jack Wilson, Tian Skoman, and Matt Fadders. So people obviously looking ahead at potentially Halaholo for 1 or 2 weeks. I know, actually, I asked you that question last night, didn't I? Because I was looking to add someone like a Cam Crawford-y type player, an outside back for 1 week, and who to cut, whether it was Faddis or Stevenson. And for that reason, Faddis has got a limited shelf life when Halaholo comes back. And we haven't heard. We heard mid-April, didn't we, last time?
Yeah, you actually asked me about Pulu.
Was it Pulu? Was it Tony Pulu? Was it?
Yeah, and I just felt that Pulu had a shot at being a starter in a pretty good team, whereas I think Faddis, his shot will be ending before too long.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, let's move into Team Naming Thursday. First up, Crusaders Hawares, Israel Dag's back. And then Andy Ellis has chimed in ahead of the Shermanator, and Scott Barrett's brought in.
And boom goes the dynamite.
The Hawares. Sonny Bill Creevy's back. Tuchelet's back at 15, and the aforementioned John Martin Hernandez playing at 10 inside Santiago Gonzalez Iglesias. Now that's the worst case scenario, wasn't it, for us, Mossman? having Iglesias there and Hernandez and who's going to kick goals.
Yep, and inevitably you're going to ask me that question.
Mm-hmm. I am.
Which, I'm hating to a certain extent. No, we don't know, and whatever we say is based on not a whole lot. No. But if you're going to make a case either way, then I guess the evidence we have is that Hernandez is playing 10, and we feel that generally when you're playing 10, that can influence the decision about who takes kicks at goals. Hernandez obviously is a massively experienced player. Mm-hmm. And would have kicked in some high-pressure situations.
Yep.
The case against, I guess, is that he hasn't been kicking this year.
No, that's the thing, right?
Iglesias has. So
yep.
you basically take what you will from that.
I think it's what you said is the most pertinent point. If I had to pin my colours, I'd say it might be Iglesias just on what he's done previously. I reached out to our resident steak eater, Coochie Town, and I asked if they'd actually played together previously, and he suggests it may have happened in the Nambia in the pool last year, but Juan Martin Van Dam, in his own words, didn't start. So he suggested Enrique would, but I think it's for the same reason that you said.
Nambia. You've gone from inventing
Namibia,
new people to inventing new countries. So.
Certainly new rugby. Anyway, yeah. Okay, so I think we don't know. We haven't heard anything from the coach. If you had to go one way or the other, I personally would go Iglesias, but it's not founded in a hell of a lot. What do you think about...
I guess the key thing is that you're going for Iglesias, but you're not starting Iglesias because...
No, there's too much uncertainty there.
And then he's listed as a 5/8, right, as a fly half.
That's right, yep.
So that pretty much eliminates him, I think. You're not really interested in him there. But I think Hernandez is still someone that you might be interested in.
In the midfield?
Yeah, because, midfield stocks being low as they are, it might be he's somebody that's worth taking a punt on. Mm-hmm. Also, he'll handle the ball a lot playing in that position. There's a chance he'll set up a few tries. There's, the opportunity for some assists, from cross kicks or short balls or the rest of it close to the line. So there's still something there. I think if you're desperate at midfield, you could do a whole lot worse.
Okay, you mentioned that you're from a fly half perspective, you're not all that plussed with Iglesias, so you'd start Jack Debrashini over him?
Yes.
Jake McIntyre?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm out. That's pretty much the bottom two that I had for this week.
Okay.
Considering Peter Grant's not playing. Smash cut to Peter Grant's parents listening on the phone, throwing something at something at his iPod.
What about Brummer?
No, I'd take Brummer, just match up as well. I think he'll go alright this week.
Okay.
Israel Dag, first up. Thoughts?
People that have got him, I think, will start him. And
you have to.
That's fair enough. Yep.
Yeah, I think you have to. We'll get into a few comparisons a little bit later on. Yeah, I don't think there's much more to say on this match. It's a fairly settled Crusaders team with Fonatere coming back in as well. Okay. Well, how do you, if you had to start Tuchelet or Dag, you'd take Dag?
Yes.
Okay, sure. Alright, Rebels Hurricanes. This has probably got a decent discussion involved in it. So Jason Woodward starting at 15.
Is he?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Are you sure?
Exactly. Yeah. Jason Woodward listed to start at 15. Corey Jane on the right wing. Matt Proctor taking Halaholo's centre position, and Vince Arso at 12. Interesting point around Vaifafita coming in at lock. But I guess the question on most people's lips or tongues or whatever the questions sit on the end of, Proctor and Arso versus Laumape and Halaholo. Give us your breakdown on how that's shaken out.
Well, by all accounts, there is a minor injury for Laumape. They said he hasn't been able to train all week. Mm-hmm. That was the reason for that. Halaholo, I saw it listed somewhere in an article that he was being given a spell.
Okay.
Why he would require a spell after having only played 2 games, I don't know, but I'm definitely not bailing on Halaholo. We the boys. I still think he's got lots of value, and it might be that you find someone out there who's a bit disgruntled with the fact he's not playing, and you could maybe get a trade in for a lot less than you could have perhaps 2 weeks ago.
A lot of people like clever after the fact, writing about how Matt Proctor was the original first choice 13, and that this is the first time they're going to have a chance to do it. You can't discard what Halaholo did, right, in his combination with Laumape, right?
No, I don't think so, but it's a squad game these days. I think everybody gets a run. Proctor's fit again. Probably deserves a game. They might be looking at this game as perhaps not one of their tougher ones, despite what they're saying. And they might have thought this is a good opportunity for a team that potentially could be on the plane home already. I mean, we don't know, but they're certainly rotating enough players to suggest that, there's something to their tactics around, being on the road. And the other thing I read was just about Arso, and they said something along the lines of that this particular game they felt suited his skill set. Now, whatever that means, who the hell knows, but
that'll come up a couple of times in this podcast. The coach game planning for opposition and trying to get a little bit too clever as far as in a couple of positions. That may not be the case in this particular point, but who are they up against? I guess Inman and Allison. Are they any less or more than what they faced last week with the Hawarus? Don't know. But you mentioned Laumape. I read that too, that he had a little injury. Then why is he on the bench?
Apparently a week off training causes you to lose fitness where you can't play for 80 minutes.
I don't know why he's on the bench if he's got that calf, and because it was a calf, right, that we heard for Laumape.
Oh, I just heard leg.
Well, yeah, okay. To me, you're either injured or you're not. It seems a bit of an odd one to put him there, and let's see what that spell means for Halaholo. Rebels team fairly settled, I guess you'd say. Cam Crawford on the left, no knee jerk to put Stefano Avalu straight back into the team yet. Reece Hodge at 15 again. We've got a few questions about Reece Hodge. What do you do with Reece Hodge? If he's not kicking, he hasn't replicated how he played in that very first game. It worries me a little bit.
No, I'm not a fan.
No, I think they're waiting for Placid to come back, right? That seemed a much better fit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've got some questions a little bit later, so we'll shelve those for now. Anything more for this particular match? So Fafita at lock.
Yeah, you did mention just quickly. I think there's a perception, isn't there, that if you're playing lock, you're less likely to carry the ball. I'm not sure if that's true.
No, I don't
especially
believe it.
not for the Hurricanes.
No.
He's taken the Brad Thompson's place. Brad. It's not
Catching.
quite as a kick-ass name, is it?
No,
Yeah.
that's right.
Brad Thompson, that's his brother. He's just gutted at this point.
Never achieved anything.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously he was heavily involved in the ball carrying, and there's sort of no reason to think Fafita won't be as well, and I still think he'll have value. The game's not really like that anymore, is it?
No, it's not.
It's not like it's all about just picking the ball up off the back of the scrum and running with it.
Yep.
You're going to get carries no matter where you're playing the forwards.
Yeah, I think he's a good player this week. I do.
Yeah.
At that loose forward position, even if he's playing lock, if he's on the pitch, he'll pick up the smiling assassin into the sideline. All right.
And just one more thing. There's always one more thing, but it's actually pretty much not related to fantasy at all. But Tony Lambourne on the bench for the Canes. So he was awesome last year for Hawke's Bay.
He was.
And yeah, nice to see him getting a shot.
On the pod on Monday, we were a bit upset that the Villiers hadn't contacted us to let us know that their family was going to be there. But in a similar vein, Jason Woodward going back to play against his old team. That's a thing, right? They always like to perform better against their own team.
Yeah,
old
people
team.
say it is. So let's buy into that theory.
Absolutely. Let's pump that until it dies. Okay, the Cheetahs Sunwolves. Little adjustment for the Cheetahs in terms of their midfield partnership swapped around. A little bit of a change in the front row as well, and Hilton Lobbett's coming in at open side as well for the Cheetahs. For the Sunwolves or the Moondogs or whatever you want to call them, Tisapisi comes back in. I suspect, looking at last week's team, that they had targeted this game on their tour as one that they wanted to pick up. So this is a much stronger team. Carpenter at 12, as I say, PC in there, Lola here on the wing, and Villiers at fullback. So no Yamada, he's out for, I don't know, he's out for a while actually, isn't he? At least a month, I think I saw the last. Is this one of your games that you're targeting for players?
This is a big uptick. Yeah, I think it is. And I think that would reflect, not so, because there's a lot of people in here that you're playing because you always play them. But if you're looking for someone that perhaps you don't normally that you are, I'd say Blommerkeys is probably the guy.
Yeah, that's one I was going to target too. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
The rest of them, I think you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
You know,
as well.
Venter, Peterson's been fantastic. You know, he's been a real surprise packet, I guess, in a lot of ways. So there's never any question about him. But yeah, Blommerkeys, I think, should have a big game.
So Derek Carpenter's an interesting one for me. He looked pretty good last week, and they did like to feed him the ball, and he's got that little bit of selfishness to him. Moala obviously hasn't been started. Tamanavalu, Rob Thompson, Fekatoa. There's a lot of players that are on buys this week, and a lot of midfielders. And we've already talked about midfielder being fairly scarce this season, and a lot of people are scratching around. It is the bottom of the barrel with Derek Carpenter, but I think you can do a lot worse in a game that's going to probably have a lot of points in it.
How can you do worse than the bottom of the barrel?
Well, it's scraping the bottom of the barrel. So when you scrape the bottom of the barrel, you find a lot of stuff there.
Got it.
Yeah.
Right.
Because a lot of stuff sinks.
This is turning into a physics lesson. Let's move on. So Carpenter, I've seen a lot of people chasing the points with him though.
There's certainly that. Absolutely.
Last week.
Absolutely.
I saw, for instance, somebody who picked up Carpenter and dropped Matt Proctor, and I think that's wrong.
No, that's taking drugs to the next level.
It is, yeah. Where it gets interesting, I guess, is Vince Arso, who will be available on waiver wires because we haven't seen him. He's been in the Naivalu triangle for the last few weeks, but now he's back. That's probably around about the period I start thinking. But yeah, if someone don't look at Proctor's score from last week and say, well, he scored 7 and Carpenter scored 20, and think, well, Carpenter's a better option. It just doesn't work that way.
Is Vince Arso the dude they were talking about on that bow repairs ad?
Vince Martin.
Blues Sharks. I guess we've got to start here. What do you make of Melani Nanai being benched for Visanier? I say benched. He's been left somewhere.
This is absolutely the right move.
I was hoping you'd say that. Look, and I think, let's not be... Visanier's a good player. So it's not that they've taken someone who's just completely not performing at all. Visanier is a good player. I just think that there are other positions. I'm looking at you, Jet Li, for instance, that you probably could have put Melani Nanai into the team somehow. Just seems a really odd way to reward one of your best performances of the season, is to leave him out of the matchday squad.
And one of the things we actually talked about with regards to Visanier early in the season was his kicking game.
Yeah.
And we thought that was something that would keep him in the team.
Right.
And I actually saw that mentioned specifically in an article, that they thought that his kicking game was something they're going to need in this match, and that's one of the reasons why he was there. So it's just one of those cases of things other than vanity points that justify people's inclusion in the team and keep him there, and this is a good example of it. Yep,
absolutely agree. I read that article. I read the quote about the kicking as well. It is the thing with Visanier, but let's see if they want someone who knows where they stand on defence as well. Piers Francis, risen from the dead. That looked a pretty serious injury against the Chiefs, didn't it?
It was a weird one though.
Yeah, it was. He was kind of a shoulder going in. It looked like a stinger, right? That was going to happen as opposed to paralysis.
Yeah.
But, so, long story short, George Moala finds himself riding the pine again. Tana Ruminga's got his bit of a love affair with the whole twin pivot, doesn't he?
Well, who knows?
Yeah,
do you think that's what this is? I have no idea.
Yeah, I hear a number of commentators talking about that's what he likes about Francis, is they give him the option left and right from different rucks, but... Look, when you've got George Moala there, I think he gives you certain other aspects as well. But so digging into that a little bit though, so Chris Horan asks on Twitter, because this is a problem most folks are going to have, is what to do with Moala. In his league, he said trading is not really an option. But I was going to ask you what you thought you could get for a mid-level. What you could get for a midfielder at the moment. What kind of... let's start at midfield. What player do you think you could get? How low do you have to go? Would you take Fonatier? Would you prefer Fonatier or Moala?
I'd keep Moala. I'm still pretty high on Moala.
Yep.
I'm kind of bullish about it, to be honest.
Yeah, I am too. Tamati Ellison. You go Moala still there.
I'd still go Moala. Yeah.
De Jong.
Moala.
Halaholo.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, it's not really fair because it's not just looking at consistent output.
No, that's more of just personal preference. I think between the two players rather than looking at situation and the rest of the things that we're sort of talking about here. So, who's someone I want to look at?
So there's a number of players on his bench that are free agents. Let me know if any of these that you would pick up for George Moala. Carraro, Geronimo, Awong, Brake, and Nico Lee.
No, absolutely not.
So he also owns Halaholo, and he's grabbed Proctor, and he's got Venter as well. So I actually think if you're going to give up anything, you probably don't need to look at midfield, because you've got the Kane starting 13, even if it is Proctor, and then you've got Venter as well, and then you can just figure out what you do in the bye week. If you were, I think you can stash him, unless you're really, really wanting at outside back or loose forward or something like that. Which outside back would you take then, if you looked at it that way? Just trying to put it in a vacuum. What about Nanai?
No.
Mapo?
No. That would make me think about it, but I might even go just a wee bit higher than that, say maybe up to McNichol or something like that.
Johnny McNichol? Yep. Sure. So I had Ishmael Yalengo and Vil Ewan here. I was going back the other way. So you're fairly high on George still, and if you can write
totally.
it out.
Yeah, I just think that eventually the tide will turn here. He'll get his chance and he'll take it.
Yeah, I think so too. It's a Saturday night game, which is a little bit difficult, but I've got a decent league in one of my leagues. Did I say lead? Or did I say a decent league? I've got a decent league in another one of my league, where I'm unbeaten, so I can afford to play him. I'm actually starting him, and I'm not going to cut anyone from my bench. I'm starting him on the off chance that maybe Piers Francis hasn't risen from the dead, and this is all to do with subterfuge from Tana. And I'm also playing him on the fact that even if Moala gets 30 minutes, Piers is probably going to come off so he doesn't get beaten up by a fairly robust opposition player that we talked about last week, Andre Esterhazy. But yeah, I'm playing him. I think George may get some points, but that's only because I am in a fairly safe state from that league.
Let me put it this way: like I'm more confident about Moala than I am, say, about Seta Tamanavalu.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, no, that's good. No, that is a good way to frame it. I think a lot of folks were a little bit more confident in Seta than George, but no, that's good. I like that. I too, I quite like. I think that it was just a matter of time before Moala comes in, but Jesus, we've said that a lot with Tana Umaga.
So just another name to throw out there, I guess. Rob Thompson is probably someone that people would think about. I mean, I'd take Moala, but I could understand why some people would be pretty high on Rob Thompson as well.
So are you taking Moala to have on your bench or to start? If you had to start someone, you'd take Rob Thompson though, wouldn't you?
This week?
Well, you know what I mean. If you're only carrying two midfielders in your squad.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Would you take Moala or Rob Thompson?
I think I'd stick with Moala and then just roll the dice on somebody else.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I think next week he'll probably be in the team.
Fair enough. Yep. Rugby Fix asks about Cobus Reinach. So we don't actually have a Sharks team yet. They're just waking up now. Rugby Fix mentions that he was one of Nathan's best halfbacks coming in. He would like just a little bit of a mid-season stock take on halfbacks. Where are we at? And how has Reinach gone to expectation?
Well, a lot of halfbacks have been kind of disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of them. Not as disappointing as, say, Kubali, who was another guy that we rated pretty high. Landajo, another person who was rated pretty high. He hasn't done a whole lot. So I wouldn't say Reinach hasn't really been a massive failure in the context of halfbacks generally, but he has in the context of how he went last year. But what you realise the more you watch is just how key, especially for halfbacks, the ability to come up with a line break actually is, because there's not that many that are even capable of it.
Yeah.
You know, you look at Andy Ellis and it's, like line breaks will come along, Halley's Comet comes around.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
More frequently.
Exactly.
It's just not something that happens, and he's still capable of that. And there's been the odd moment. There was that kick ahead for a try assist and things like that just they could have turned in his favour. He's also hasn't started every game.
Nope,
I still think that he's better value. I'd still prefer him than Brad Weber, and it's a tough one, but only because I'm just not confident that Brad Weber is going to start every game, especially now that Tawera Kerbalo's back. I think they'll keep chopping and changing.
I agree. I think they will too. Which is a nightmare because you don't really want to hold two halfbacks in your squad. It's really difficult to try and justify that. So you'd have TJ Perenara 1?
Yes.
What about number 2? Would you have Frisbee or Phipps?
I think they're kind of on a very similar level. I guess I'll take Frisbee.
Yep. And where do you put in someone like Aaron Smith or Lindaggio then? Aaron
Smith's been interesting, actually.
He has. He's very fits and starty, but he's put up some. He started with a 22, then he's got a 12, a 20, and a 15. But in the middle of that, he's got some absolute just killjoy.
Yeah, I just think that there's not many halfbacks out there that are capable of producing big games, and I still think that Reinach is one of them.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree.
He's probably still in that number, I don't know, say 4 to 7 range.
Yep.
And that's not a bad place to be.
I also think that Kobus Reinach is a little bit of the way that he's gone is the same way that the Sharks have gone. It hasn't completely gone all to plan for Gary Gold. There's not a hell of a lot of attacking intent there. There's something not quite clicking there. The defence is going okay, but they just haven't got the right patterns yet, and everything seems to be a bit of a grind.
Well, I'd imagine they would have built a lot of what they were going to do around Pat Lambie.
Well, that's a problem too, exactly. Yep, indeed. But I was going to bring that up, but then you step down to Joe Peterson. I know there's a gap, but he's a pretty competent player.
No, he's decent, yeah.
Okay, anything more from this game?
Yeah, and Ioane seems to get a minimum of 40, Akira that is, a minimum of 40 minutes. You'd hope for a little bit. It's just bizarre that there continues to be injuries in the loose forwards. Yeah, he still doesn't. I don't even want to really go into it because it's just irritating, but
yeah,
I'm going to continue to start him off the bench, in the absence of, say, on bye weeks where people like Elliott and Squire are off. I'm still going to do it.
Yeah, that's right. I don't understand why he's not starting. I think if there's something missing there, and I know Luatua probably is a bit of a line-out option, but if there's something that he needs to work on, good coaches should be able to get that out of him. You mentioned injury, so yeah, of course the big injury was Blake Gibson. He looks to be out for quite some time. So Latimer or Kara Pryor is going to start, depending if Latimer's got enough fitness and can come in. Big blow for Blake, unfortunately. I think he's probably out for the rest of Super Rugby. Is that what you saw as well?
No, they were saying somewhere towards the international break, weren't they?
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right, Waratahs Brumbies then finally get to see it. At least it's listed in the program that we finally get to see it. Israel Folau at 13. Andrew Callaway, interestingly enough, is probably the talking point from our perspective at 15. Zach Guilford has got a broken foot, apparently, so must have found which nightclub that was in, but anyway. Michael Hooper, obviously, starting at open side, Jed Holloway at 8 and Dempsey at blind side. What do you make, first of all, about Israel Folau? We have discussed this previously, whether it's an uptick or downtick, whether he goes into the midfield, but give us your cliff notes again on that.
Not phased.
Yeah.
Doesn't make a big difference to me. I think he'll just put in his normal sort of performance. I think, like as somebody said once before, he'll make up the points in other ways probably.
Yeah, what he'll lose in those cheap run-back meters, he'll gain in defenders beaten or offloads or something like that when he gets into contact.
Yeah.
Andrew Callaway at 15. What do you make of that?
Wait and see, I think.
Yeah. I think so as well. Had he been playing on the wing, I might have been quite interested in him. It comes with a lot of pedigree, really, really good, strong junior wallaby, good tournament. Hasn't really been able to crack it into the team when there were okay options in Carraro and Guildford. Couldn't get above them. So there are a number of folks asking about him. I might take a punt on him in one of my leagues, but we've got to remember it's the matchup as well, right? The Brumbies.
Yep.
They're a good team. They'll find a way to exploit someone who's had one cap playing at fullback, I'm sure.
And we've got to remember that the Waratahs have been really poor.
Yeah, they have been. And this is at home as well, where they've been, even worse. Another week, another boring Brumbies team.
Yeah, yawn.
Yeah, really. That is very much the same thing over rinse and repeat, isn't it? Jordan Smiler comes in at 8 but yeah, that's about it.
Yeah.
Okay, Andre Muller asks, and this is really first world problems, but a problem nonetheless. Bernard Foley or Bowden Barrett?
Oh, it's Barrett, and at this point it's not really that close, I don't think either.
No, I do. We mentioned that the Sunwolves game versus the Cheetahs is probably going to have the ball thrown around a wee bit, or at least a few points. Maybe not the ball thrown around, but it should have some points in it. I think the Rebels Hurricanes probably has a few points written on it as well. And that's why I think Barrett is probably the clear starter over Foley anyway, but then you give him an uptick for playing the Rebels as well.
So he's just saying that's just for this week?
Yeah, just for this week. So someone dropped Foley apparently in his league, and and no one actually put a waiver in at one point as well. So
yeah, I mean for if it was over the rest of the season, I'm taking Sapawanga, Cruden, probably Lelia Fano. There's probably some others that I'm missing. Well, probably yeah. All ahead of Foley at this point.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. He also asks Andrew Callaway or Rob Coleman.
I'll go with Rob Coleman.
Yeah, that's the way I went.
Kind of know what I'm going to get.
Yeah, certainly I've said it for a number of weeks, is that just I'd like to see it first, and sometimes I've been bitten with Tony Pulu, SB Murray. They've put up points, but let's see it. Rugby Fix asks, would you drop Visanier, Hunt, or Coleman for Pulu or Stevenson?
No,
sticking with that. Sticking with Visanier, especially after being named.
Yep.
I guess the question is either Hunt or Coleman. Pulu, Stevenson. It's about the same, really, isn't it? Maybe Pulu, you'd think about it.
Yeah, not a big Stevenson fan.
No.
I'd like to see it again from Carmichael Hunt.
Yeah, right, sure.
Do that trick again. Yeah. I'm watching more closely this time.
Look out for the come down. All right, Bulls Reds. So, as you said, we talked about it at the top of the hour. Tian Skoman has been dropped to the bench, and Francois Brummer comes in. Bjorn Basong takes Yamba Yalengo's spot on the left wing. I guess let's start there. What do you make of that?
That will be very disappointing, I think, to Yalengo, because that would come as a bit of a shock.
Yeah, I think so as well. So I read the article, and the inference from Murray was that the Reds prefer width, and the Australian teams are a little bit more suited to, Bjorn Basong's a little more suited to playing against a team that plays with width and against the Australian teams, whereas the local derbies, you need a little bit more power. But for me, that's just outsmarting yourself. Just play the better player.
It does seem like he's getting a bit cute there, doesn't it?
Very cute. When you're considering that we're not talking about someone, like Malcolm Yar versus Jonah Lomu.
Yeah, that's right.
We're talking about Bjorn Song and Yamba Yalengo. Yalengo's got pace. It's not like he's a slouch. He's got power as well. I don't know. Just when he's got his tail up as well and he's getting rewarded, scored 2 tries. I don't know. Some of these guys have read some really interesting man management books. Alex Ferguson will be just tearing his hair out.
Yeah.
No,
I think so. That's probably one of the more surprising selections of the weekend. The Brummer thing is probably the least surprising thing that I've seen this weekend.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. SP Murray, he should go all right. Now, I've got a little caveat here. Bulls are playing the Reds. I was wondering if the Bulls, if there's something to do with the Reds' style of play that doesn't allow outside backs of the opposition to score well. So Faddis was terrible and Wilson was terrible. Do we have to start thinking that Murray might be terrible and Ismail might be terrible?
After 1 week? No, I don't think. I mean, we do love the crazy theories, but probably taking it a bit far.
Yeah, no, that's what I thought as well. And I wasn't sure. It flagged up to me as a statistical anomaly. I know Sopawanga played 15 anyway in the second half, and he got those points from that intercept or that long try at least. So yeah, I'm not too concerned. We'll be pumping SP Murray. Think he'll look alright? Go alright?
I think he'll be fine. Yeah, I think last week was a little bit of an anomaly in some ways. He didn't, like I said, I didn't think he did a whole lot for his points in some ways. There were some pretty easy, some of the holes that opened right up for him. He kind of profited from there. I guess I'm more interested to see if the Reds are as rejuvenated as they appeared last week.
That's right. Yeah, I'm not too sure either, but a decent travel over the Bulls. So Gus Neathling asks, rank these, Falau, Dag, Ismail and SP.
I think I would swap Ismail and SP and then just keep that list the same.
Falau, Dag and SP. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I can
understand why you might put SP ahead of Dag.
Yeah, I was just looking at the right wing versus right wing and left wing versus the Reds, playing Nabuli versus F. Satir. It seems you get a lot more pay dirt from F. Satir, but there's no way we're going to say Bjorn Basong is recommendable, even though that he's got potential to score those 40 points that he did. I'm a little bit more, I talked about it last week as well with Ismail. I'm a little bit higher on him. I quite like how he goes. But yeah, it's Falau starting, and I might consider, to me, Ismail and Dag just kind of a little bit hedging my bets a little bit there, not all in the one game. Okay, anything more from this game?
I don't think so, no.
No.
A settled Reds lineup, I guess is one thing we could say. Starting to look more week on week like they've determined a team and they're going to stick with it, and I think that can only be a good thing for them. And they've got a world-class goal kicker on the bench. And that's always a good thing.
They do indeed.
Well, so do the Bulls, though. Dan Creel, by all accounts, is a fantastic. No,
yeah, that's right.
It's
so I think the only guy that was coming, there's a new lock that's coming, which is quite nice. I know Rugby Reg is pretty excited about him. All right, let's move on to Lions Stormers. Now, we don't actually have any teams for either of these teams yet. So we'll go to asking a few questions. I did see that Yeko Creel and Mapo are doubts. The original article that was written on Tuesday said that Yeko Creel was cleared and he's just not going to have any contact for 2 days. We were very, very suspicious about that article. To me, it looked a little bit worse than that, and the fact that he can't have contact and he hasn't had contact yet sounds as though it's getting a little bit more worrisome as we go deeper into the week. The same thing with Mapo as well. You expect Damien Delende to start?
What I was just thinking is that it sounds like he's been put in the hole in prison. It's just no contact. Is that what they do?
No light, just slide the dinner under the door.
Yeah, exactly. It's nothing to do with an injury. It's just he's been put into solitary confinement. No contact.
Nice, I like it.
Delende, you said something about him.
Yes. Do you think he's going to start? Do you think they'll put him in?
Oh, I see. You think this is another tricky team selection?
Yeah, maybe. I just wondered if maybe they'll do the same thing as they did with Naivalu, just give him another half hour again from the bench.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think they're going to get too tricky.
No, I think so as well. Okay, so Ian Struzna asks, last outside back spot, Cam Crawford, Aiden Toa, Kornosko-san, Van Wyk or Lolohea?
So I guess they're actually difficult to split. So if we're looking at matchups, I've got a funny feeling it's going to be Toa.
Do you reckon?
I do.
Wow. Making me turn in my undug grave.
Come on, you can't say he's not due for one.
That's absolutely true. Absolutely true. I might lean towards some points in the Rebels game or the Lolohea one. I might lean towards Crawford or Lola here, depending on how you like. But I think, go back to your point. If you wanted a solid output, Toa and Skosan, actually probably Toa is your likely one to get you between 6. His floor's quite low because he gets a lot of ball and he is the fullback for the Brumbies, so he'll get you a few points, potentially get you a few more, whereas the other guys could potentially give you a donut. So, but I like the upside of the other guys. Simon Summers asks, this is quite good. This was when I canvassed a few folks for questions. He said, should we drop all the Kings outside backs now that the Kings coach is the backs coach, or should we drop all the Bok outside backs? Thought that was pretty damn good.
Yeah, that's good.
Dave Beaton asks, he did ask originally around who's the most disappointing player thus far, but I won't. That's a whole podcast in itself. There's a number of players that we will get into at some point. But his question that I thought was interesting is, he also asked who is the most unpronounceable name in Super Rugby. And he did put a couple of names in the tweet, but I assume he's trolling me because when I even was trying to read the tweet, I was having a mild stroke. Those names were awesome.
Well, perhaps instead of doing that, you should just concentrate on reading the tweet.
Yeah, that's right. But, there's no way I'm going to repeat those names. Wesley Mundell asks, he's got a bit of a selection headache in his loose forwards. Which two between Hooper, McMahon and Tafur?
Always Hooper. And Tafur.
Do you?
Sorry, I didn't hear the third name.
Sean McMahon.
Oh, yes, I've heard of him. He's quite good too.
You're sticking with Hooper and Tafur?
God, it's a good problem to have, isn't it?
Really good problem. I think I leaned a little bit more towards McMahon.
Well, just based on points he scored so far this season, I guess you'd have to.
Yeah, he does all right at home as well, but looking at it, looking at some stats. So, I think it's Hooper and McMahon, but I don't think you can go too far wrong with either. Adam Phillips asks who to start, Callaway, Reece Robinson or Mvovo? Assuming Mvovo starts.
Yeah, wonder if this could be one of Mvovo's yo-yo games. The Mvovo yo-yo might come back to the top here.
It's supposed to be
then again, it is the Sharks, isn't it? So
yeah.
I guess Reece Robinson.
Do you? Okay.
Well, I don't feel great about any of them, to be honest with you, but
no, and they do need to get him the ball more, and I wonder if that's what they've been trying to figure out in the bye week to get him the ball, because he looks dangerous every time he does touch the ball. So I might lean that way as well.
And do you think that one way that they're going to try and do that is by breaking Zach Gilford's foot? That's one way to get him the ball.
Giving him a free bar tab at home or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that still a club in Sydney? I got no idea. I've been there for a long time. Roscoe says on Twitter, Zas, Venter, Proctor, or Juan Martin Hernandez for my midfield pairing.
Oh, I'll be the first two.
I think so too. That's who I went. They've been really good this season. And
Venter's got a good matchup, and Zas is still, I'd say, more dangerous than the other two.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This obviously assuming he starts. Okay. Anything more from just the reviews of each of those games?
Not really. No.
Not really.
It's been a reasonably. I mean, there hasn't been any. There's been a few interesting selections, but they're more about players perhaps that didn't get picked. That you were sort of, I guess, look at Nanai for instance.
Yep.
So there's probably a lot of people that were waiting and seeing, thinking about people like Visania, what was going to happen with Nanai, people that had picked up Woodward last week and thinking, well, he was injured, is he going to get a start now? So we've kind of resolved a lot of those questions, and some of them, they wouldn't have been people that would necessarily have needed to be picked up anyway. There would have people just been, you would have sitting there on your bench thinking, well, am I going to stick this guy in or this guy? For probably a little bit less activity on the waiver wire outside of it, probably, 2 or 3 players.
Mm-hmm. No, I echo those thoughts. Let's move into a few players to recommend now. We try and get guys that are less than 50% started, so there's a chance that he's sitting on your bench. What have you got for this week, Nathan?
I've mentioned him already, Blommakeys.
Mm-hmm.
I just got a good feeling about Clayton. I think he's going to have a big game.
6% started. He's on my list as well. Jason Woodward is one for me. He's only 16% started. Who else?
Fafita, I think, is another one.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Right. I think he'd be probably somebody that was dropped a bit because they would have saw Brad Shields back thinking that's him done. But rumours of his death were greatly exaggerated as well. So I think definitely someone worth owning.
Yeah, that's right. And the last one for me is, well, the last two actually is Neil Murray, and Sargil Peterson. 31% owned and 26% owned respectively. That's going quite heavy on that Sunwolves Cheetahs game.
Yeah, and I think quite rightly too.
Yeah, I think so as well.
I mean,
okay.
Even if it wasn't against a super weak opposition, you kind of like the Cheetahs at home anyway to throw it around a little bit, and so you add in the Sunwolves, and it's all pointing in the right direction.
And I guess we can probably trot up our play any front row that's playing the Sunwolves away this week. So the Cheetahs front row.
Yep, all over them.
I think they'll go okay.
Yeah.
I would rank them outside of the big numbers if you're scratching around, and they actually, unfortunately, they had scored quite well quite early on, so they are quite highly owned, and obviously started because most folks aren't carrying two front rows. But if they are out there, just have a quick look and pick them up, and you should get some decent points out of them. All right, Mossman, anything more for you for the week?
Not really. It's been a reasonably straightforward week, I think. I think the key things that most people are thinking about are actually good players that are on the bench and wondering what to do with them. I think those are probably the things that are causing people the most anxiety. So the Halaholos and Moalas and the Ioannis of the world.
Naivalu, Damien Delene.
Yeah, all of these kind of guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a lot of midfielders that are just sitting there on the bench that I have a feeling, and I've heard anecdotally from a few folks as well, that they are going to start them in their lineup, even if they aren't starting.
Yeah. So I think, there's going to be some interesting pre-match graphics, shall we say, that'll come up on your TV that may either have you happy or crying into your beer.
Yeah, that's right. So we'll get the team news before the game week lock for the Crusaders Hawaris. So just keep an eye out on our Facebook or on our Twitter, which is Fantasy Rug Draft, Fantasy RAG Draft, or on Facebook at Fantasy Rugby Draft. We get those teams, so we'll post them through and see if there's any players that have been pulled. There's been a lot of flux, certainly within the Haweras team, so keep an eye out for that. But that's probably about all the time we have for today. Mossman, you're on at Nathan Mossman.
I like the way that team name is slowly morphing even more so over time. It's now Hawera, the Haweras, which is actually a town in Taranaki.
Absolutely. This is what we had a fairly candid debate on at the start of the season, didn't we? The comical transitioning of whether it actually should be Jaguars or the Spanish nickname, because I haven't heard it pronounced the same twice yet.
Yeah, but it's because what's happening now is it's being said with the syllables as it would be if you said it in Spanish, but not with the accent.
That's right.
You just get lazy after a while. It's just it's just that's the Hawaras.
Indeed.
The Hawaras.
Hawaras, I like it. Bogans. Alright, thanks for downloading and listening. I'm Bruce Wilkinson. He's Nathan Mossman.
If the glove don't fit.
Aotearoa Pedo.
What a bust here by Christian Cullen. Plenty of support, and what a